The empty boat. I remember the night. The sea was calm, the stars indifferent, and the nets empty. Peter had said it simply, "I'm going fishing." Not with fire in his chest or some renewed sense of calling. It was the kind of sentence you speak when you don't know what else to do. The others followed him, not out of vision, but out of habit. Sometimes following isn't faith. Sometimes it's just fatigue. They went back to what they knew. Muscle memory took over, hands tying knots, scanning the water, casting the nets. The rhythm was still there. The instincts hadn't left them. But something else had. Jesus. He wasn't in the boat. He wasn't on the shore. He wasn't breaking bread in front of them or calling Lazarus out of tombs. He had risen, yes, but he wasn't here. And that strange in-between, knowing he's alive but feeling like he's gone, it does something to you. You go back. To fishing. To distractions. To what once worked. But that night, the sea gave them nothing. No splash, no tug on the net, no shimmer of silver in the moonlight. Just silence, and soaked hands, and eyes scanning the water for something that wouldn't come. That's the kind of silence that isn't quiet. It echoes. It repeats back all the doubts you thought you buried. Was any of it real? Was he really who he said he was? Was it just a season? Just a story? Just over? There's a pain in the moment you realize your nets are empty. Not because you failed, but because they used to work. Once, you dropped a net and it came up full. Once, you spoke a prayer and felt fire. Once, you opened the word and it read you. But now? Nothing. That's the ache. Not losing something, but remembering how full it used to be. And that's where Jesus found them. Not in revival. Not in fire. But in fatigue. He stood on the shore and asked the question he already knew the answer to, "Children, have you caught anything?" They hadn't. He knew. He wasn't asking for information. He was asking to wake them up. What's the one thing that tries to pull you back when Jesus calls you forward? When God is quiet. There are seasons in the life of faith where the air feels uncharged. Not heavy. Not holy. Just still. And not the kind of still that comforts, but the kind that confuses. You're not running from God. You're not angry. You're not doubting on purpose. You still pray, still show up, still whisper amen at the right moments. But deep down, something's gone missing. The fire. The nearness. The voice. It's not rebellion. It's absence. And no one talks about this part, the part where God doesn't feel close, and you can't point to some great sin that caused it. It's just, silent now. I've lived those days, where the word feels like paper, and the ceiling catches your prayers like dust. Where worship songs bounce off your chest instead of opening it. When others cry in the presence of God, and all you feel is the ache of remembering what that used to be like. You wonder, did I change? Did he? Or is this what maturity feels like, a faith without fireworks? We want God to always speak in thunder. To split seas. To set bushes on fire and name stars. But what happens when he doesn't? What happens when the same God who once spoke in floods now speaks in, wait? You begin to understand something few ever preach, that silence is not absence. And hiddenness is not rejection. There are parts of God that only reveal themselves when he's not performing for you. Because that's what we want, isn't it? For him to keep proving it. But he already did. On a cross. On a hill. In a grave that didn't stay filled. Now, he asks something deeper than emotion, he asks for trust. The dry season doesn't mean he's far. It might mean he's doing something in the dark. Like roots growing underground. Like healing without the spotlight. Faith isn't proven when God feels close. Faith is proven when He doesn't. So if you're in that place, where heaven is quiet and your heart feels like an unanswered question, don't run. Don't numb it. Don't fake it. Sit in it. Name it. And trust that the one who called you out of darkness hasn't stopped walking beside you, even if you can't hear His footsteps. Echoes of obedience. He was standing on the shore. Not miles away, not hidden behind a storm, not cloaked in glory. Just there. Close enough to see, close enough to hear. And still, they didn't recognize Him. These were His friends. His followers. Men who had walked miles behind His footsteps, eaten at His table, watched Him bleed. And yet in that moment, they looked right at Him, and saw a stranger. Familiarity can become blindness. We can get so used to the idea of Jesus that we stop looking for the reality of Him. We've heard the stories. We know the language. We sing the songs by heart. But when He stands beside our ordinary, we miss Him. Because we expected Him in the extraordinary. But Jesus rarely shows up where we expect. That's the whole scandal of the gospel: God in flesh, born in straw, buried in silence. And now, alive, He walks the shore like a common man. The disciples didn't need more theology. They needed eyes to see. It wasn't until obedience cracked the shell of their routine that they realized who it was. "Throw your net on the right side," He said. And they did. That was it. Not a thunderclap. Not a vision. Just a simple instruction. And in the doing, not the seeing, they recognized Him. Sometimes it takes a step of obedience to recognize the one giving the command. That's why the quiet instructions matter. The ones that feel too small to be God. The phone call you feel prompted to make. The apology you resist. The morning you rise early just to sit with Him. He speaks. Not always with volume, but always with weight. Obedience doesn't always come with clarity. It often comes with questions. But if you wait for certainty before you move, you'll miss the miracle standing right in front of you. Jesus wasn't hiding. He was waiting. Not for them to see Him, but for them to listen. And when they did, the nets filled. The silence broke. And their eyes opened. Because obedience echoes. And in the echo, He is revealed. Fireside Conversations. The fire was already burning. Fish crackled over the coals, and the smell of bread drifted through morning air thick with memory. They didn't light the fire. He did. Jesus had already prepared the meal. He didn't ask them to serve. He asked them to sit. And in the quiet warmth of breakfast, He turned to Peter. "Do you love me?" No judgment. No sarcasm. Just 3 words that cut deeper than any rebuke. Peter had heard that fire crackle once before, in the courtyard of denial. That night, the flames lit his face as he swore he didn't know the man. 3 times. And now, 3 questions. Not to shame him, but to heal him. "Do you love me?" Peter answered. "Yes, Lord. You know I love you." Again. "Do you love me?" The words came slower. "Yes, Lord. You know." And a 3rd time. "Do you love me?" The repetition wasn't for Jesus. It was for Peter. For every time he failed, a chance to say it right. For every fracture, a suture. That's the strange kindness of God. He doesn't edit out your worst moments. He invites you to revisit them. Not to relive the pain, but to replace it. Jesus didn't say, "Do you regret it?" He didn't say, "Will you prove yourself this time?" He said, "Do you love me?" Because love, not guilt, is what fuels the call. "Feed my sheep," He said after each answer. But not before the question. Not before the heart. You're not sent because you're perfect. You're sent because you're in love. And only love can carry you through the storms, the silence, the weight of waiting. Duty will crack. Discipline will wear thin. But love holds. It's love that wakes you early and keeps you late. It's love that speaks forgiveness over yourself when the shame knocks again. It's love that keeps you looking for Jesus, even when you don't feel him. That morning, Peter didn't earn back his place. He received it. By a fire. With a question. 3 times. Do you love me? God isn't where you left him. It's a strange thing we do when God feels distant. We retrace our steps. We go back to the last place we felt him. The retreat. The late-night prayer. The church where everything made sense. We sit in the same seat, play the same worship song, flip the same underlined pages in our Bible, as if he's a memory to be reenacted. But he's not. God doesn't live in our nostalgia. He lives in now. Peter went back to fishing. Back to the boat. Back to the nets that once held miracles. But the miracles didn't follow him there. Because God doesn't call us to walk in circles. He calls us to walk by faith. And faith doesn't face backward. We cling to memories of God's presence like photographs in an old box, sacred, but still static. And sometimes, without realizing it, we start worshiping the place where he was instead of listening for where he is. But the cloud moved. The pillar of fire moved. The tomb is empty. God is not frozen in your past encounter. He's not replaying the greatest hits of your faith. He's alive, and he's walking forward. Obedience means following, not recreating. And that's hard. Because it means leaving the familiar. It means trusting that the God who moved once, still moves. It means the next miracle won't look like the last one. It might be quieter. Smaller. Stranger. But it will still be him. So stop trying to find God in what used to work. The net isn't where the blessing is. The blessing is wherever he tells you to cast it next. Nostalgia is a beautiful liar. It feels holy, but it asks for no faith. But faith, real faith, says yes to a God who won't stay still. A God who invites you to let go of what was, and follow him into what is. Dogs and owners. There was a dog in my neighborhood once. Big. Strong. Breed with a name that sounded expensive. The kind of animal that turned heads when it walked by. You could tell someone paid real money for it. Trained it. Fed it the good stuff. Groomed it like a showpiece. But the dog didn't know any of that. It sniffed trash like the rest of them. Barked at shadows. Rolled in the dirt. Wagged its tail at strangers who offered scraps. It didn't know it was worth more. Didn't know it belonged. Because dogs don't assign value. Owners do. And I wonder, how many of us live like that? We wear collars of calling. We carry names God gave us. Chosen. Beloved. Worth dying for. But we wander through alleys looking for affirmation. We compare our bark to someone else's voice. We chase scraps of approval when our Father set a feast. Because somewhere along the way, we forgot who owns us. Spiritual identity isn't something you achieve. It's something you receive. You're not valuable because you perform. You're not chosen because you impress. You're his because he said so, and he never lies. But we get distracted. We look around and see other believers doing more, preaching louder, praying longer. And like strays, we forget that pedigree isn't proven in the street. It's known at home. Only your master knows what you're made of. Only he knows the hours he's poured into your soul. The battles he fought for you in silence. The patience he's shown while you chase things far below your name. You don't have to prove your value to anyone. You just have to listen for your master's voice. Because sheep know their shepherd. And dogs? They know their owner's footsteps. They know when it's time to stop running and sit. To stay. To follow. The world doesn't see your worth. Sometimes even the church forgets it. But God doesn't. You are not defined by how others treat you. You are not measured by how loud you bark or how fast you run. You are not what you've done, or what you've failed to do. You are what He says you are. And when He looks at you, He doesn't see a stray. He sees His. He whistles, and waits. And all He wants, is for you to come home. What about Him? Jesus had just restored Peter. Called him back from shame. Rebuilt his purpose. Gave him 3 chances to say, I love you, and handed him a commission, feed my sheep. But then Peter did what we all do. He turned his head. Saw John. The beloved one. The one Jesus always seemed especially close to. And Peter, fresh off redemption, still couldn't help himself. Lord, what about him? It sounds innocent. Curious, maybe. But beneath the question is a poison we all drink too easily: comparison. Peter had just been forgiven. Recommissioned. Blessed. And yet, his eyes were on someone else's story. We do it too. God whispers something personal to us, and we immediately look sideways. We weigh our calling against someone else's platform. We measure our pace against their applause. We ask, why not me, or why him, or why is her path smoother? Jesus doesn't entertain the question. He doesn't explain John's story. He doesn't say, oh, he'll suffer too, or you're still important. He says something better. Something harder. What is that to you? You follow me. That's the cure for comparison. Not affirmation. Not explanation. Obedience. God doesn't ask you to understand someone else's calling. He asks you to walk in yours. Because applause is never the goal. Faithfulness is. And no one else's obedience can fulfill what God asked of you. You weren't called to run someone else's race. You weren't created to echo their voice. You were designed, knit together, breathed into, for something only you can do. So keep your eyes forward. Jesus didn't say, watch them. He said, follow me. Still waters, still voice. There's a reason the psalm says He leads us beside still waters. Not raging ones. Not crashing waves. Still. Because stillness isn't the absence of God's voice, it's the space where it becomes unmistakable. We think God speaks most in power. In movement. In miracles. But often, He speaks in clarity, not volume. Stillness isn't empty. It's precise. It's the moment the clutter quiets enough for you to hear the whisper that was always there. The whisper that says, I'm still here. I never left. You don't have to perform for me. You're mine. These aren't words shouted from heaven. They're breathed into silence. And sometimes, the greatest miracle is not that God moves mountains, but that He steadies your heart. You've heard Him in the chaos. Now hear Him in the calm. This story, Peter's, yours, mine, it's not about being impressive. It's not about always getting it right. It's about returning. Recommitting. Recentering your heart again and again on the only voice that truly knows you. The voice that doesn't compete with the noise, but waits until you're ready to listen. So maybe this is the season for stillness. Not to retreat. But to recalibrate. Not to do more. But to hear more clearly. And when the silence comes, don't be afraid. It might just be the place where your heart finally catches up to his. If this touched your heart, help share this. Like, comment, subscribe, not for numbers, but so this message reaches someone else who needs it.